Ultimately, with China's defense sector surpassing that of Russia in a growing number of fields, air-to-air missiles being a particularly notable one, it can be expected that China will attempt to integrate at least some upgrades onto the Su-35. The result could very well be the most capable Russian-built fighter ever for air-to-air combat, potentially surpassing the capabilities of the newer Su-57, which at least for the foreseeable future will not have access to comparable missile classes or stealth coding technologies, and which may be forced to rely on an inferior AESA radar to that provided by China's own defense sector. China became the first client for the Russian Su-35 4++ generation heavyweight air superiority fighter in November 2015, when it placed an order for 24 of the jets alongside 2 regiments of the S-400 long-range surface-to-air missile system. China's interest in the Su-35 is widely thought to have been influenced by the need for a technology transfer from Russia, primarily technologies pertaining to three-dimensional thrust vectoring engines, rather than because of a need for the aircraft themselves. This transfer was included as part of the contract. While the Su-35 is a formidable fighter, as of 2020 its capabilities notably lagged behind those of indigenous Chinese aircraft in many key fields. Over the coming decade, the aircraft will increasingly be considered at the lower end of the Chinese fleet, particularly in terms of its sensors and armaments, which provides the PLA with a strong incentive to upgrade the aircraft domestically. The possibilities for doing so are considerable, with Russian fighters having been modified to carry foreign weaponry and subsystems in the past, and the Su-35's airframe boasting formidable characteristics. A look at 4 major possible upgrades is given here. One of the most outstanding weaknesses of the Su-35 relative to new Chinese AESA radar-equipped fighters such as the J-10C, J-11BG, J-16 and J-20 is the limited capabilities of its air-to-air missiles. The R-77 was the first active radar-guided missile developed for Russian fighter-sized aircraft, and while it compares favorably with the American AIM-120C and Chinese PL-12 with a heavier warhead and longer range, its performance is very limited compared to newer US and Chinese designs. While the American AIM-120D, introduced in 2014, was intended to provide an advantage over rival designs for at least a decade, and had a formidable 160 to 180 kilometers range, the Chinese PL-15 notably outperformed it by a considerable margin. The new Chinese missile not only has a much longer range, between 250 and 300 kilometers, as well as a heavier warhead, but is also guided by an AESA rather than a passive radar. This makes the missile much more difficult to jam, allows it to better lock onto stealth aircraft at longer ranges, and overall provides superior reliability to the American and Russian designs. One of the Su-35's primary shortcomings compared to its Chinese counterparts is its lack of an AESA radar, with a passive radar not only providing lower efficiency but also being much easier to jam. While the Russian Air Force is notably considering integrating an AESA radar derived from that of the Su-57 onto the Su-35 in future, China's greater familiarity with such technologies could allow it to do this domestically at a much lower cost. Chinese AESA radar technologies are thought to be considerably ahead of those of Russia, and a new generation of these radars is expected to enter service in the early mid-2020s. These could replace the Su-35's Airbus E radar, which is considered the world's most capable passive radar deployed by a fighter, and provide the Russian-built jet with far superior situational awareness and a more reliable sensor suite. Another shortcoming of the Su-35 is its reliance on the R-73 air-to-air missile for short-ranged engagements. The design was considered the most capable of the Cold War era and has been modernized considerably since, but ultimately is far inferior to its newer Chinese counterpart, the PL-10. The new Chinese missile is fitted with a multi-element infrared seeker capable of engaging targets at plus 90° off-boresight angles. It is paired with the helmet-mounted displays used by modern Chinese aircraft to allow pilots to track targets beyond the aircraft's radar scan envelope using the high off-boresight capability, with the pilot able to lock on by simply turning his head towards the enemy aircraft. This provides Chinese jets with a considerable advantage over their competitors at close ranges, complementing the maneuverability advantage provided by three-dimensional thrust vectoring engines. The missile would complement the formidable capabilities of the Su-35's airframe at close ranges provided by its high thrust-weight ratio and three-dimensional thrust vectoring engines. China has emerged as a world leading in stealth technologies with a particularly strong emphasis on radar-absorbent paints, and alongside applications on its J-20 fifth-generation fighter, it has also applied them to advanced fourth-generation aircraft with reduced radar cross-sections, namely the J-10C and J-16. These coatings at present are thought to give all of these new Chinese fighters a reduced radar cross-section relative to the Su-35. An application of similar coatings to the Russian-built jets would make them considerably more survivable at long ranges. Given the considerable investment in the field, Chinese stealth coatings are likely to far supersede their Russian counterparts, including any coatings which may be applied to the upcoming Su-57 next-generation fighter.